Sprott Asset Management and a fund managed directly by Rick Rule have recently come into this tiny zinc company to become their largest shareholder. Since their recent drill results, Sprott has joined other large institutions like Euro Pacific Gold, Resource Capital Funds, and the Commodity Discovery Fund. To learn more about this incredible opportunity in the resource sector, visit crushthestreet.com/zinc.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into crushthestreet.com. I'm Kenneth Amaduri, and we have on the line right now John Rubino of dollarcollapse.com here to get some initial reactions post-election results. And you all know John Rubino, excellent economist, articulates what is going on in the markets probably better than anyone I know. So without any further ado, John Rubino, thanks for joining me.
Hey, Kenneth. Good to talk to you again.
John, let's get your thoughts here. I spoke to you after Brexit, and we had another Brexit moment here with Donald Trump shocking the markets here, at least the futures markets and gold markets last night, and defying the media, defying the polls, and that completely misrepresented the American population. What is your initial reactions to all of this?
Well, this is a lot like Brexit because, in both cases, it was something that was mostly put forward by people who were not among the elites and who, the 1% and the political class looked down on. And so them winning was kind of inconceivable to the media. And going into each election, the polls had the other side up by a little bit, but definitely enough to make it seem highly likely that they were going to win. And in both cases, the other side won. And so here in the U.S., the mainstream media are just shocked. Today is basically a postmortem for everybody but Fox News, where they're trying to figure out where they went wrong and who to blame for it. And so they're missing the point. I just published something by Glenn Greenwald of The Intercept, who gets it. He says that Trump and Brexit are symptoms of a much deeper disease, which is the system that's been designed by the elites for the elites, and that doesn't work for regular people. Immigration, for instance, open borders is awesome if you're rich, because that means there are lots of cheap nannies and gardeners coming over the border and factory workers who can't complain about working conditions because otherwise they'll be sent back. So it's good for you, But if you're middle class or working class, then open borders means the house down the street with 19 people living in it, and broken down cars out front and everything, and crime and et cetera, et cetera. And free trade, if you're rich, is great because it means you get to sell your symbol manipulation skills all around the world and make a fortune. But if you're a factory worker, free trade is horrendous because it means they're going to close your factory down, throw you out of work, move the factory to Mexico, and you have literally nothing else to do because below factory work in our society is basically McDonald's or being a greeter at Walmart or something. So your life is destroyed by this process, which is enriching the elites. Well, the elites don't get this because they don't hang with people who are affected by this stuff in a negative way. And so they're shocked by these elections where people have the short-sightedness and the gall to vote against the elite candidates. And so Trump is really the huge, outrageous example of that process at work because he's, to put it mildly, a flawed human being.
Sure.
Without a very good bedside manner and no experience in running a government. And yet he was willing to stand up and say, listen, the system is broken. The elites are screwing you over. So let's just tear the system down and start over. I will fix it for you. And meanwhile, Hillary Clinton was saying, you know what, we're in pretty good shape. We're making progress. So my administration will be a continuation of the 8 years of the Obama administration. So she's basically saying, you get more of the same with me. And a surprisingly large number of people don't want more of the same.
Yeah.
So they voted for Trump without necessarily in a lot of cases liking Trump, but he's the guy who wants to fix things from their point of view. So that's the issue.
He voted. It was a vote against Hillary in a lot of ways, a vote against the establishment. John, when it comes to the markets, and maybe you can articulate or just shed some light as to what we saw last night, as the polls and the electoral votes started coming in, the markets were getting rocked. We saw the futures markets down, gold going up. But interestingly enough, the markets opened up pretty stable this morning and are up pretty big, actually, now as we do this interview. Any insight as to why this happened?
Well, that's a bigger surprise than Trump winning, because up until this point, whenever Trump was up in the polls, the markets would go down because he was the wild card. He was unpredictable. And whenever Hillary was up in the polls, the stock market would go up because she was the known quantity and she was Wall Street's candidate. Well, that's how the markets reacted in futures when it looked like Trump was going to win. The Dow futures contracts went down by like 900 points last night at their very bottom. And that is the consistent response of the financial markets throughout this election. But then here we wake up in the morning and it's a great day for financial assets. Everybody's buying blue chip equities and growth stocks and selling gold and silver. Now they started up, but now they've trended back down. So it's risk on. And I don't really know how to explain that, except to say that it's possible that the markets woke up and saw that the Republicans are now totally in control of the government. And historically, Republicans have been very pro-Wall Street and very pro-big bank because, of course, they work for the big banks or run the big banks. And they own the majority of the stocks and bonds and the factories, et cetera, et cetera. So you would think that they would be the ones who would be most favorable to a continuation of the status quo. And it's possible that the markets have decided that no matter what Trump said during the election, the House and the Senate are made up of their people, Mm-hmm. And so Trump isn't going to be able to do anything that really threatens the elite status quo. And so let's not worry. So it's possible that that's it, that they expect to co-opt him.
Well,
so now the question is, can they do it?
Well, and I was going to ask you about that. I mean, with Republicans controlling Congress here and Trump in the White House, how likely do you see it being that he actually does repeal Obamacare and negotiate trade deals and all these things that he promised and people voted for him for?
Well, the last time the Republicans were in control of the entire government under George W. Bush, they basically invaded everybody in sight and raised government spending. The government got bigger under Republicans last time around. So if history is any precedent, the sound money, small government people shouldn't get too excited about the Republicans being in charge because they're not really the party of small government anymore. Mm-hmm. They're the party of a different kind of big government than the Democrats, but in each case, it's big government. So Trump is really the wild card here. Did he actually understand what he was saying during the election, or did somebody just type up some talking points for him and he went out and parroted them? We don't know that because we've never seen him in action in public policy. He's never actually run anything before in the public sector. He's run lots of companies, but he does that in a secretive, really erratic way where one company fails, the other one succeeds, the next one fails. It's not clear whether he's even any good at running private sector companies. So he's really unpredictable. Mm. And anything we say now about what he might do is going to have to be revised as events unfold. So I don't know. I think the bigger issue is that the amount of debt that we've taken on in the past 30 years makes us, first of all, ungovernable. There's no way to fix, quote unquote, this system without incredible amounts of pain, which turns into incredible political turmoil. And there's really probably no way to fix the system, period. This thing has to break under the weight of all this debt, one way or another, before we can set about debating and then trying to build something that's sustainable going forward. Mm. So I don't really think it much matters whether Hillary Clinton won this election or Donald Trump won it, because the vast majority of the people who are now running stuff in Washington are the same people. Mm. And they're going to do what they've always done because, right now government, especially the central government, a job there is an extended job interview for the real money that comes later when you go to work as a lobbyist or a think tank guy or a banker or whatever. Alan Greenspan now, Ben Bernanke is now working at a high frequency trading company. He's making more this year probably than he made in the last 5 years running the Federal Reserve. And that's what all of these guys have their eyes on. So the idea that they're going to bite the hand that eventually is going to feed them is highly unlikely.
Wow. Yeah, good points right there, John. It's really not the far alt-right anymore that are noticing the fraud and corruption. And it's in many ways, it's becoming conventional wisdom. And we've seen that here to a large degree in 2016, with the population rising up, the silent majority rising up. Although it's showing that the popular vote, the majority actually did vote for Clinton here. But in any case, a large group of people showing their frustration towards the system. Do you believe, is there optimism in your mind here as to what you're seeing? And I know you said that, the system is going to break here one way or another, but any optimism towards what we're seeing here in 2016?
Well, people are starting to educate themselves, and that's always a cause for optimism. But they're too little too late, really, because we've taken on vastly more debt than we can ever hope to pay off. And so it really doesn't matter now if the average person understands that fractional reserve banking and central banks with unlimited printing presses are a bad thing, because they've already done their damage. The body is already riddled with cancer, and there's no real way to fix it, short of a 1930s style depression where all the debt is wiped out through default, or Weimar Germany style hyperinflation where we just inflate it all away. Jim Rickards has a scenario that is the least painful conceivable way out of this, and that's where all the big governments of the world finally decide that they can't continue to devalue against each other, because that's a zero-sum game. You devalue your currency and it hurts your trading partner, and then they have to respond in kind and so on. So everybody's going to devalue against gold at some point. We go back to a modified gold standard of some sort, with the dollar being defined as, let's say, 1/10,000th of an ounce of gold. That puts us in a position to go forward with a sustainable system, but it crushes all the people who believed the promises of the government and loaded up on government bonds and bank accounts and things like that. Because, if you've got $100,000 in the bank and the government devalues your currency by 2/3, then you might end up with $30,000. That's what's going to happen to an awful lot of people going forward. And it's the people who are least deserving of being hurt this way, because they're the ones playing by the rules and doing what they should do and believing what the people in charge tell them. The guys who are going to make out from this process are the ones kind of like you and me who don't trust what they're being told and who bet against the system. In 2008, 2009, you could have made a fortune. Lots of people did make fortunes by betting against the establishment banks. If you shorted the banks, bet against the housing market, and then bought precious metals, which is effectively a bet against the monetary system, you made a ton of money. And something similar is coming in the not too distant future when this system blows up again. And so there's a chance to make a ton of money through this crisis, but the average person's not going to do that, because the average person isn't paying attention. They're going to their job, they're coming home, they're spending time with their family and their friends, and they're living a normal life, which doesn't include hours and hours obsessing over the minutia of financial and monetary theory, like a lot of people in the sound money community do, and so they're not prepared for this when it happens. So I think that, first of all, unfortunately, a lot of the people who benefit from the current system are going to also benefit from the coming crash, because they can hire people who can explain it to them. If you're a multimillionaire. You just hire a high-powered business consultant who has seen cycles and who knows when to move out of financial assets and into real assets. And they'll steer you in a direction that allows you to prosper, even after the system that you designed blows up.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, your employees and your less rich relatives, they're all going to suffer. They're all going to see their lives, in many cases, absolutely destroyed by what's coming.
Yeah. Well, that's good warnings right there, John. John, I want to thank you for coming on the show and just sharing your thoughts here post-election. Is there anything else that you wanted to leave us with here? And, of course, any new updates regarding dollar collapse or anything else you got going on, please share with us.
Well, Kenneth, there is always a lot more to the story because this is a complex, fascinating time that we live in. But I think from the standpoint of most of your listeners, the quickest, simplest way to guard against what's coming is to buy some precious metals. Buy some silver coins, buy some gold coins. And those things will tend to do well in the kind of crisis that is likely to engulf the world in the not too distant future. So take steps, do what you can, and prepare to protect your family.
Thanks so much, sir. I really do appreciate you coming on.
Sure. My pleasure, Kenneth.